Toby Young is the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union. Hello, Toby.
Hello. How's it going, Mark?
Really, really good. We call ourselves the home of free speech. I try to police that on a daily basis, and I never really want to see anyone lose their job unless perhaps they've broken the law. Above and beyond that, surely they can say what they think. Piers Morgan, on his own hit TV show, begged to differ about the veracity of Meghan Markle's comments, and now he's walked. What's your reaction?
I think it's very disappointing, first of all, that Piers has left Good Morning Britain. He was, like you, Mark, a staunch champion of free speech. He robustly expressed his own views, but he also allowed others to express theirs. And I think he was generally a force for good on that show, and I'll be sorry to see him go. But I think the circumstances surrounding his departure are extremely concerning. If reports in The Telegraph and The Sun and elsewhere today are to be believed, the reason he left is because his bosses at ITV were insisting he apologise for the remarks he made about the Meghan and Harry interview on Monday, in which, as you just said, he cast some doubt about the veracity of things Meghan said. We also learned more recently, in the past couple of hours, that Meghan herself complained to ITV, and that we don't know, but that may have played a part too in why Piers Morgan's bosses asked him to apologise. And I think it's quite inappropriate for a public broadcaster to insist that their broadcast journalists apologise for views they're expressing. I mean, it would be one thing if Piers hadn't been challenged, if no one on Good Morning Britain had expressed an alternative point of view, but that's not the case. When he made those remarks on Monday, his co-presenters challenged him. Alex Beresford was given an opportunity to put a completely different point of view the following day. And Piers clarified on Tuesday that he wasn't suggesting that we take with a pinch of salt as a matter of routine anyone who says they're suffering from mental health problems. He made it clear that if you are suffering from mental health problems, or if a member of your family or your social circle says they are, then that should be taken very seriously and you should urge them to get help. He didn't apologise, but he certainly clarified what he'd said on Monday. For ITV to insist that he row back on those remarks, particularly if they did so at the behest of Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, is really sinister and really concerning. That shouldn't happen to any journalist. If you express a robust opinion, as you normally do, Mark, you shouldn't have to justify that to your bosses or apologise for it the following day. And Ofcom is very clear in its broadcast code that it's inappropriate for public broadcasters to ask journalists to express opinions, not newsreaders, but journalists like Piers Morgan, broadcast journalists who typically express robust opinions in the course of their show. It's completely inappropriate. This is what Ofcom says for broadcasters, to ask them to row back on or apologise for things they've said just because people complain about it, particularly if the person they've said it about complains.
Indeed, and it doesn't bode well, does it, for free speech when a major broadcaster like ITV makes this move, because they are in many ways the gatekeepers of free speech in this country.
Yes, I mean, you would expect ITV, like the BBC, to defend the speech rights of its journalists, its broadcasters, and not say, well, if something you've said causes an outrage mob on Twitter, to demand your scalp, or if, as a result of a social media campaign, tens of thousands of people complain to Ofcom, or worst of all, if the person you were rude about rings up and demands that you apologise, you would expect them to be much more robust about defending the speech rights of their journalists. Because, as you say, if those institutions, if public broadcasters watched by millions aren't going to defend free speech, how can we expect other institutions to do so?
Indeed, and it's this awful expression that I used and mentioned and referred to in my daily dispatch about people with problematic views. I mean, that is snake oil language, and that's all to do with shutting down people, not who are breaking the law, but actually whose views simply don't fit with, I don't know, the echo chamber of social media.
Yes, I mean, the question you should always ask when people suggest imposing limits on free speech, limits beyond what the law currently limits, is, well, who decides? Who has decided that what Piers said on Monday was inappropriate, was beyond the pale? Who's decided that a line has been crossed? Who drew that line? If we're going to allow outrage mobs on Twitter to draw that line, or chief executives of public broadcasters who are concerned about their own reputations and their own careers to draw that line, then that is essentially granting the power to censor other people to people who shouldn't have that power in our society. I don't think that my own view is that there was nothing inappropriate about what Piers said on Monday. Yes, he expressed himself extremely robustly, but that's what you expect of Piers. That's what ITV employ him to do on Good Morning Britain. And it's not as if he was, not challenged by other people. I mean, of course, broadcasters should be obliged to present a range of views, but we're entering a very sinister period, I think, if broadcasters can now say that if you say something that is unfashionable, that riles people up, or that political activists on social media can easily object to, then that is beyond the pale. That crosses the line. It should be clear, where the line is, and it should be defined in law. It shouldn't be up to, Twitter mobs or anxious chief execs to constantly be redrawing that boundary and constantly shrinking the Overton window of what we can acceptably say.
Toby Young, thank you for your time. Toby Young is the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union.